Welcome to High Writing Threads. Today we're going to be talking about how to use PowerShell to interact with WMI. Okay, so before we get started talking about how we use PowerShell to interact with WMI, first we need to talk real briefly about what WMI is. WMI stands for Windows Management Instrumentation, and it's essentially a way that you can interact with your operating system to get information about disks, information about BIOS, information about users, all sorts of things. So typically when I'm writing a script, I might want to get the BIOS information from 1,000 computers or something like that. So I might run a WMI query against those computers and pull back a report that basically tells me what BIOS version each of those computers have. Could be logical disks, could be installed programs, could be a number of things that you want to pull information about. Okay, so we can get information using PowerShell through the commandlet called get WMI object. Okay, so when you use this, you're basically saying, okay, I want to get something from WMI, get some kind of information from it. Now, in order to do that, you need to be able to identify a class. And then know that you need to know what class the information you're looking for is in. So in my case, I want to look up, say, logical disks, right? So I might say class Win32 logical disk, okay? Now, how would you know it's Win32 logical disk? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But just for right now, realize that you're going to use the getWMI object. You're going to specify a class, and then that class will pull back an object that looks something like this. Okay. Now that doesn't look awesome, right? We might want to format that a little bit different. So what we'll do is we'll just do format table, or short, you could just do FT, and then auto size, and we'll run that again. A little bit better, right? Say you just want to pull just a couple columns from there, and you use a select, and we'll select, say, device ID, drive type, and say free space. Okay, so that's basically saying this select statement here is just saying I want only these columns: device ID, drive type, provider name. So now when I go ahead and run it, I'll get just those. The most common things that I've pulled are things like list of installed software. I've pulled memory information. I've pulled disk information. I'll pull network configuration information, operating system version, that kind of stuff. So those are kind of the most common things that you might pull from WMI and get information about a computer or lots of computers. Right, and I have another video on how to do a for each loop. So you could just have a list of computers. You could pull some kind of information from WMI against a list of computers using a for each loop. So if you're interested in seeing more about how to do that, see my for each loop video. But I think the most immediate question that I would have if I was not familiar with how to use PowerShell would be, okay, I get it. You've got get WMI object, and you're specifying a class that you want to pull information from. And then you can select what columns you want over here with the select device, drive type, whatever. And again, that's obviously going to depend on the information that you pull, what the column names are going to be. And then you can format it. Okay, that makes sense. But what in the world, where do you get this class information? How would I know which class to pull from? Well, you can do an internet lookup, just kind of do what WMI class would give me this information. Or you can use a commandlet called getSymClass, which is this one here. Okay, so you could just run that, and then it would give you a list of classes. Okay, so but you're like, okay, that I don't know what any of those things produce for me, other than, okay, it's a bunch of names of classes. So you could write a simple script, something like the one I have here. What I'm doing is I'm storing all of this information in a variable, right? In PowerShell, you create a variable by putting a $sign in front of it. So I created the variable WMI class equals getSymClass with a pipe. What I want to do is do an out grid view, and I want the output mode to be multiple. What does this do? Okay, so I'm basically getting all of the information that you see here by using the getSim class, and then I'm taking it and I'm outing it to grid view, which you'll see in just a second here. So when I run this script, this is what happens due to the out grid view, right? Out grid view means pull up this dialog box and show the contents of this in a grid view or in this dialog box, okay? So in this dialog box, it's pretty cool. I can now search Win32 underscore. So now I can see all of the classes, WMI classes, start with Win32 underscore, and I can just select it, right? What's interesting is I can select it because I've said out grid view dash output mode. You can also use pass through, which is actually kind of the same thing as using this output multiple. What's cool about this is if I select output mode, I can also just select single instead of multiple. And if it's single, then I can only select one object in here and hit OK. Multiple, I can select as many as I want and then hit OK. In this case, single would actually probably be better because I only want to query one WMI class at a time. Now, once I select the object in here, or actually the property in here, it will store it in this WMI class variable. And then I want to say, with that, I want to say get WMI object class, WMI class dot sim class name. Well, why dot sim class name? Because here we're saying get WMI object, which class do I want to get? Well, the one that I selected in here. But when I select something in here, I'm selecting this whole row. I don't want that. I want to be able to do a get WMI object class just Win32 battery or Win32 USB controller, not Win32 USB controller Microsoft.management.infrastructure. Whatever. So I can specify which column I want to pull from by typing the variable dot and then the column name here. And then I want to just format it as a table in auto size. Okay, so I'm just going to select the same one that I did before. Logical disk, hit OK, and it will provide the same information that we had in the last one. So as I said before, you could go and do an internet search to find out which class you need to use to find your information, and honestly, that's probably one of the best ways to do it until you start to become familiar with working with WMI. But you could potentially use this script and start just looking through each WMI class to see what information it returns. So just Win32, and you could just go through each one that looks kind of like what you're looking for, and then hit OK, and it will return the information that's in that object. Okay, a lot of the times that you use this, you're going to be using it, if you're a system administrator, you're going to be using it against remote computers, not the same one. So it's pretty easy to do it against remote computers. You just do WMI, get WMI object. You know, you could do class Win32. What do we do? Logical disk. And then just use computer name. And then type your, computer, whatever the name of the computer is. Computer 1. And then that will go out to the remote computer and query WMI over DCOM or WinRM and retrieve the same information about that remote computer. And then again, if you're a system administrator, you're most likely going to be using it in that way. Okay, so the final thing that I'm going to talk about is, I'm just going to give you a really quick and dirty example of how you might run through a list of computers using for each. So you might create a list of computers variable and then store, say, an array, maybe an array of computer names, right? So computer 1, 2, and 3, store that as a variable. Then you loop through the items in that variable using the for each loop. You start a for each, and then you say for each machine, whatever you want to call that, for each X in Y, for each machine in list of computers. Then you'd say get WMI object class Win32 computer name, and then here's where you'd put the variable, right, for that represents each one of these machines, right? It loops through computer 1, 2, and 3 using this machine variable. Okay? So, and again, in a for each loop, right, you say for each thing in list with the parentheses, and then the curly brackets are basically, all right, what do you want to do for each thing in the list? So that's how, real quick, how for each loop works. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful to somebody, and thanks for watching.